Hey guys!
Welcome back to Bunkus Custom Bikes.
So tonight we are, first of all, we're having some beverages because we're going to be sanding tonight. So we're going to do a video on painting. So we're going to talk about, what goes into painting motorcycles. It's kind of the same process for painting cars, painting anything that you really want to look good and have that nice, good, glossy sheen to it.
And we like shiny stuff around here.
We do like shiny stuff. So tonight what we're going to be painting is this fuel tank off of the Suzuki Bandit to our left. Maybe you're right. I don't know how it goes into computer world.
This thing.
But the client wants it red. So we're going to paint it red. Now the issue with that, let me get it to stay there, is that we're starting with black. So obviously, if everyone passed kindergarten, they know that black is darker than red. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to sand it down, prime it, and then put our color on it. So tonight I have Mrs. Bunga here to help me sand, and it is always, always, always a blessing to have Mrs. Bunga in the shop, especially when she's willing to help.
I'm very good at sanding.
So I'm going to make this video, it's going to be kind of a long one, but I'm going to make it in steps. So anytime you're going to paint, as long as it's not clean, bare steel, you have to start with sanding. So even if it's bare steel, if there's any type of rust on it at all, or if the surface isn't clean and smooth, it's got to be sanded. So in this case, we have a clear coat on it, and we basically want to sand that down and just rough it up. We want a texture for the primer to adhere to. So we're going to get some, what did we get, 180? 220?
We got some 180 sponges, and we're going to use this with a little bit of elbow grease.
And we're just going to scuff the clear coat off. So we're not taking it down to bare steel. We're not taking all the color off. We're just scuffing it, enough for the primer to stick to it. And then we're going to go with a red base coat, a red mid coat, and then a clear coat. And then we should be done. But
it's almost like buffing your nails, if any of the ladies are watching, before you do a gel coat.
Yeah, what she said. So we're going to run into a little time lapse here, and we're going to get to sanding down this clear coat. And we'll walk through the steps as this video goes on. Stay with us.
It's gonna look dope.
I don't mind our sanding music, but quick step is before you get to sanding, everything needs to come off. So fuel cover, I got the decals here. We're gonna sand those decals off. I've got the fuel connection disconnected, and then all the electronics are off as well. Everything's got to come off, and then we'll obviously mask it off when we're ready to paint. So we got it all sanded down. I've got Mrs. Bunga behind the camera. But as you can see, we didn't take the color off. Like, it's still very clearly black. All we did was we just sanded a lot of that clear coat off. And what this does is it creates micro abrasions in the paint for the primer to actually stick to. And just listen to my soothing voice while I caress this seductively. But what I'm doing is I'm wiping off all the dust with a microfiber rag. I'm doing it dry at first, but before we actually hit it with the primer, we're going to wet this rag and truly get all the dust off. If you have any dust or any grease on it, like my handprint right there, would contaminate the paint. So we're going to make sure that, here, I can show you again. So that's just skin oil. So we're going to make sure that we get it nice and really, really clean before we actually start painting it. Oils and any contaminants really will ruin a paint job. So that's where we're going to leave it for now. We'll get to painting in the morning. Me and Mrs. Bunga have some more beers to drink. So stay with me. It's going to be the same video. And we'll get to painting in the morning. Alright. Step 2 is prep. So we've already sanded it. Now we got to prep it. I know sanding kind of seems like that's part of prep. And it is. But when you're prepping something, you're really fully getting it ready to take on paint, because the next step after prep is paint. So prep includes taping, cleaning, removing any other thing that you don't want paint on, just pretty much doing everything that needs to be done before you actually get to the paint. Also, we're going to degrease it. So you can use any kind of degreaser. I wouldn't really use anything like solvent-based, but I guess anything that's degreaser is technically solvent-based. But I've got a good degreasing spray that I'm just going to spray on a rag, wipe it down. After you degrease it, you really don't want to touch it without gloves. I use nitrile gloves. That's pretty much really all you can get nowadays. If you're going to use latex gloves, make sure to get it without the powder because the powder will stick to it. Even the little like vinyl lunch lady gloves will work. It's just something that acts as a barrier between your hand and the thing you're painting. You don't want to get that skin oil on what you're going to paint because it will affect the paint. So I'm going to get it prepped, and really all I need to do is tape off the fill hole and then take these little rubber grommets out of the bottom here. And then after that, we're going to get to painting. Alright, so I wiped it down with a good degreaser. Now I'm going to come back with a completely fresh, clean microfiber towel and gloves and dry it. After I do this, I really don't want it to touch anything. If it touches anything that has grease or dirt or anything on it, I really want to go back and wipe it again. And this goes through the entire process of painting. Pretty much once I hang it to paint it, I don't take it down. I just let it stay there. That way I don't run the risk of setting it down and letting anything get on it. Alright, step 3 is priming. So you don't always have to prime. I always suggest it. It just gives you a good base to start for your paint. I like using a neutral color primer. This is just gray. Sometimes you can use primer that's the same color as your base coat. I always like to use a light color because it's almost like starting white. You know, it'll show whatever color you're trying to do perfectly. But if you want your base color to be a little darker, you can use a darker primer. It's just, I mean, I could go on for hours about it. With the primer, with any paint, follow the instructions on the can or from the manufacturer. All paints are different, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you you have to paint at a certain temperature, you have to let it dry for so long. They're guidelines. Ultimately, follow what the paint says. This is just Rust-Oleum primer in a can. This is what I use for pretty much all of my projects. If you're getting your paint from a paint distributor or a manufacturer, anything like that, you can get their primer. Just make sure it's compatible with the paint you're using. For example, if you're using a lacquer paint, I suggest you don't use like a polyurethane primer or vice versa. They're not compatible with each other. So do your research, read the instructions. A lot of times compatibility and all that is on the instructions. For this primer, I can paint anywhere between 50 and 90 degrees. Outside, like the outside temperature, which my shop is the same temperature as the outside. And it has a flash time of 15 minutes. Excuse me, apply 2 or more light coats with a few minutes apart. So, and it dries to the touch in 15 to 30, handles in an hour. So, before we hit the base coat, we'll let it sit an hour. We'll wait 5 minutes in between each coat of primer. After that 15 minutes, we're going to sand it, get it nice and smooth, and then if we have any spots bleeding through, we'll hit it again. And that's priming. You're just setting a base coat. Or a prime. Base coat's different. I also want to talk PPE before we get to painting. So if you're painting outdoors, like outside, you don't really need to worry as much about PPE, but painting inside, eye protection and definitely respiratory protection. This stuff will choke you up so fast. So definitely get yourself a good respirator with some good cartridges. Make sure they are in date and they are the right type of cartridges. This is a particulate filter, or excuse me, no, this is a, I can't remember for the life of me. It's a 3M 60923, but it's good enough for paint. I don't remember what kind of filter it is, but it's good. So get yourself a good set of respirators and eye protection. I need to find my eye pro. And lastly, when you're setting up, as you can see, I've got the tank right there in the corner. You can see the bike right here is covered in this tarp. Always, 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 always cover what you don't want paint on. Even though you may be spraying right there, it's in the air. It's gonna settle on things. So always, always, always cover what you don't want paint on. This includes other motorcycles, the walls. I don't care about those walls. That's why I'm painting inside. Normally I set up a whole kind of paint booth, but since we're just doing some rattle can here, it's not gonna aerosolize as much. But still, I've got this covered up because, you know, I don't want red paint all over a black bike. So the first coat is gonna be very light. Just very patchy, just like that. We'll wait about 3 minutes, and then we'll start filling it in. All right, we got a good base of primer on it, and boy, it stinks in here. We got a good base of primer on it, and we're gonna let that dry for about 15 minutes now before we go to sand it. And we're not really gonna sand it. We're just gonna get like a green, like Brillo SOS pad, and just kind of take the high spots out of it. It's a filler primer, so it kind of gets these little rough and kind of nubbies to it. And if you don't take those off, it'll show through the base, mid, and clear coat, and it'll take away a lot of the shine that it would normally have. So we'll let it dry. I'm gonna open the shop up, get some air in, and then we'll get back to it. All right, now that our primer has cured long enough, about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the weather. The warmer it is outside, typically the faster it'll dry. Again, follow the instructions on the can. Since it's a fillable primer, it will fill all the small imperfections in the paint and give you a real nice, smooth finish when you're done, but you have to sand it after you prime it. So I've just got some 800 grit sandpaper, and we're going to very, very lightly sand it. If you've got to sand it hard to get some of these little, to get it smooth, then you're going to have to hit it again with primer after, and you might have to do that process a few times. But basically what you want when you're done is just a nice, smooth, it should have almost a gloss finish to it. As you can see right now, it's very dull. But we're going to go with our sandpaper and just hit it very lightly. Again, respiratory protection during this. All right, so we got it pretty much sanded down clean. If you see it, it's now reflecting the light a lot more. That's that kind of semi-gloss finish I was really saying that we're looking for. While you're sanding it, it's important to change your sandpaper pretty often because it clogs up and then it stops sanding. So I went through 2 pages of sandpaper. Now we're going to wipe it down with a clean microfiber rag, and again, we're going to degrease it after this. And also remember, very important, gloves. Don't want your hand oils on it. So I'll just leave the video playing. We're going to start with a dry rag, and we're just going to wipe the extra dust off. And a lot of times with this rag, when you feel a rough spot, you'll know that you might still have some spots to sand. Like it's kind of catching that rag. Yep, right there. So we'll hit that again, and then we'll come back with our rag. Yeah, see, much smoother now. Yeah, a little bit right there. And in there. A little bit right there on the nose. Right there. A little bit right in there. Nope. Alright, that should be good. Alright, so we're going to wipe it down with a dry rag first. And then we're going to get our rag that has the degreaser on it and just kind of give it a really quick wipe. We don't want to scrub, we just want to kind of give it a nice quick wipe down. And this is just to get all the grease that might still be in that paint, or might, you know, you kind of want to try to bleed through the primer. So we're just going to wipe it real quick. We don't want to soak it, just a quick wipe. And then come back with our dry rag. Now let that sit and dry before you start putting your base coat on it. Shouldn't take long. Pretty much the time it'll take you to shape your base coat. Alright, let's get this hung up again. Primer's done. Alright, step 4. I think I'm on 4. Sand, prep, prime. Yeah, 4. 4, color, base coat. So, as far as base coats go, I typically like loose paint that you spray with a HVLP gun, a high volume, low pressure gun. Like, you know, you see the videos that spraying with guns. I like that. I think it has a little more control. However, this is what the customer provided with us, so this is what we're going to do. I have no affiliation with this brand, Custom Cans. Not sure where it comes from, but this is what he provided with us. So it comes with a base coat and a mid coat. A lot of times colors come with just a base coat. Typically when you get a mid coat is when you're doing any kind of like candy or pearl or metallic effect or anything like that, where that effect is mixed into the mid coat. So obviously, as it sounds, the base coat will go first and then the mid coat. The mid coat's going to be a little bit of a lighter paint, whereas the base coat's going to be where that real color is. So the base coat should go on in about 3 coats, and that should be plenty. And then the mid coat, depending on how rich you want that effect to be, will depend on how many coats you want to put of it. So again, follow the instructions, but typically a base coat is about 2 to 3 coats, and your mid coat's going to be about anywhere from 3 to 5. Again, we're looking for about 15 minutes of flash time in between each coat. I forgot to hit play, but very similar to the primer, it goes on very first as a very light, splotchy coat. This paint's actually pretty cool though. It's very different than any spray paint I've used before. It seems to have kind of a candy effect to it already. In a rattle can. I'm digging it. Might check out this Custom Cans place. Again, no affiliation, but check it out, guys, if you want to. Alright, while we wait for the base coat to dry, we're going to start shaking up the mid coat. So this base coat, it appears to be metallic. As I was painting it, you can see the little metal flakes flying off of it. There's another reason to wear respiratory protection. You don't want that stuff in your lungs. Alright, let's start the mid coat. Alright, that was our 4th and final coat of mid coat. So, just a thing, if you plan on reusing your paint, you always want to clean these tips out. So all you do is hold it upside down, point it away from you and squeeze it till it runs clear. All right, now it's important to wait before you do your clear coat. You want your color coats to dry. So again, follow the manufacturer's recommendations as always. This one says wait an hour. So we're gonna give that an hour and then we're gonna clear coat it. All right, it has been an hour and this is dry enough. So now we're gonna hit it with the clear coat. Again, normally I'll do it with a spray gun and actually mix up my clear coat myself. In this situation, the customer has provided us with a 2-part spray can. This is interesting. I've used these twice before, but basically there's a chamber in here that separates the activator from the actual clear coat itself. Now this is a 2K clear coat, which means it's going to be high gloss. The way this 2-part spray can works is, as you can see, there's it almost looks like a spray nozzle on the bottom, but all it is just a button. And it comes with this little plunger cap up top. You take this off, you basically just put it on there, and then when you're ready, you punch it. I'm not going to do it yet, because this does have a shelf life once it's mixed. I believe it is 48 hours. So yeah, I mean, that's a long time. But basically, you know, it's got the instructions on it. You know, you want to shake it real good before you mix it, and then you pop it and you shake it real good after you mix it, and then you spray. Now this stuff is nasty, nasty, nasty. So definitely gloves, respirator, glasses, and do not take your respirator off until you're outside or away from it. And anytime you enter back into the room after you spray. It's not stuff you want to be breathing in. So let's see, what does it contain? It says isocyanates. What I'm getting that from that is cyanide, maybe, deadly. So it's probably not cyanide, but we're gonna get some air. So I'm sure everyone wants to see me pop it. So we'll pop this on here, just like that, and then we're gonna mix it again. I'm holding it down as I'm mixing it to make sure that it actually releases all of the contents of it. But I kind of expected it to be a little bit, it was a little less antiquated. Let me put it on the table. There we go. So it did actually click all the way in. Now we'll mix it. And we'll hold it down and mix it. All right, so with clear coat, it's kind of similar to the base coats. You want to do, nice light strokes, nice light coats on it, and do 2, 3, 4, 5 coats until you're satisfied. The problem with clear coat is it is much thinner than your color coat, so it will run much easier. And if it runs, you kind of have to, you can't dab it, you can't get rid of those runs. So you're gonna have to wait till it dries, sand it, and do the whole thing again. So just be very, very careful, very, very, slow and easy, nice thin coats, and then build it up over time. Don't get overzealous and get yourself some runs. Nobody likes the runs. All right, get some air in here. Ooh, it's strong. I'm not gonna talk. Actually, let's go outside and I'll talk to you out here. It's stinky. All right, there we go. Okay, so I just finished the last coat of clear coat. I ended up doing 5 coats, 4 or 5. I can't remember, but it's a nice, deep, rich, clear. This needs to go in the trash because, like I said, it's a 2-part, and once you activate it, 48 hours. I'm not going to be painting again in the next 48 hours. So now we wait. The next step is going to be buffing, but we need to let that completely dry before we handle it. We don't want to leave any prints or fingerprints in the clear. So I'm going to throw this away. I'm going to doff on my PPE, and we're going to come back in about 2 days, and then I will show you how to buff it. Okay, last step is to polish. So there's a couple different steps in this. First thing I like to do is, it's been probably close to 48 hours, like 38 to 40 hours. We'll go with 40 hours. So almost 2 days that this has dried. The weather's been a little bit colder, so I gave it a little bit longer. We don't want the clear coat to be tacky at all. We want it to be completely dried. So first thing I'm gonna do is take a clean microfiber cloth and just wipe it all down. We're just getting any dust that may have settled on it off. So we're gonna start with that. Just very gently, just wiping it down. You see this is pulling all the dust off. And apparently there was a lot of dust that settled on it. And we're just gonna wipe it all off very gently. So then after we've completely wiped it down, removed all the dust, we're going to come in with a flashlight or any kind of bright light to inspect it. And the reason we're doing this is because, just these overhead lights may not give us enough light to actually be able to see any imperfections in it. And what we're looking for when we're looking for imperfections is, imperfections. We're looking for what we call dust nibs, and those are little bits of dust that have kind of embedded themselves in the paint. And we're also looking for any other imperfections, like right here. It looks like something touched that, so that's, an imperfection in the paint. And when we find things, we want to have our rag handy to see if it's something that we can just wipe off. So if it's something we can just wipe off, we don't need to worry about it. Now, if we find actual imperfections, then we need to sand it. And the way you sand this is you start with more of a coarse grit, still a finishing grit, but we're going to start with like an 800 on this right here. And then we're going to work our way up to all the way to 2000. And then we're going to polish it. And you don't want to sand too much. You just want to sand just enough to remove the imperfection from it. So that's what we're going to do with this spot right here. So let me get some sandpaper. It's 2000, 1500. Alright, so typically you like to double. So I'm going to start with 800, and then go to 1500, and then 2000, and then we're going to go to an actual polishing compound. Alright, so we've got the area sanded down from 800 to actually remove the imperfection, to 1500 to start polishing it out, to 2000. And now you can see that we have some kind of discoloration here, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to get an actual polishing compound, and we're going to polish that out and buff it. And then once we get to the final step of the polishing compound, we're going to do the whole thing, just to bring it all to the same sheen. Alright, so this is the polishing compound that I like to use. It is Meguiar's Mirror Glaze. Again, no affiliation with the brand, just what I like. You always want to make sure you shake it really, really good. They have buffing wheels that you can attach to a drill. I don't know if you can see mine right there. No, you can't see it. But to actually work out imperfections like this, I like to start with a hand pad and just work it there. And then I'll come back with the pad that goes on the drill and work the whole tank. So what we're going to do is we're going to put just a little bit on this pad and we're going to work it in a circular motion, kind of giving a little bit of effort with it to actually work it out. And voila, no more dull spot. So now we're going to go ahead with the drill attachment and we're going to polish the whole tank. You know, it's the old adage, wax on, wax off. That's exactly what you're doing. You know, you're putting it on, you're spinning it on, and then you get yourself a nice clean microfiber towel again, and you wipe it off in, you know, another circular direction. You can go the opposite direction, it doesn't really matter, but you know, you don't want to just wipe it, that'll streak it. So you want to actually wipe it off in circles. So I'm gonna get the pad attached to the drill. This is the pad I'm using. It's just a foam pad. I like to put a little bit of the polish on the pad and then a little bit on the tank and then just work it all the way in. If you see it's going dry, just add a little more. All right, now we're just gonna wipe it off. So some people will say to wet your rag to wipe it off. I like to leave it dry because I think if you wet it and then wipe it, you're going to take a lot of this polish off. And what this actually does is it provides a protective coating for the paint. I mean, obviously it will wear off over time, but for a good amount of time, it will protect the paint. So I like to just leave it on. It's not going to hurt anything, you know, don't go licking it, but just make sure you get it all. It's pretty easy to tell where it is because it's dull, whereas, you know, the rest of the tank will be nice and bright. Now keep in mind, it's about as clean as it's going to get right now. So anytime you touch it after this, you're going to leave fingerprints and streaks. And again, you're leaving the wax on, so those fingerprints and streaks will wipe right off. Just another reason I like to just leave the polish and the wax on. You always check with the paint that you use to see what will work with or what waxes and paints will work with the, sorry, I'm having a stroke. Which waxes will work with the paint you put on. Some are not really, they don't play well with others, but for the most part, they're all okay. And again, don't do this until your paint's completely dry. All right, y'all. That's it. There she is. Beautiful, shiny, glossy dark red. Don't mind that dent right there. That was there when he brought it to me, I promise. Like, I don't see my ugly mug in it. I can't see my ugly mug in it. I hope this video was helpful for anyone trying to paint. I might do another video some other time with showing how to do a spray gun, but for now, you know, we're just doing spray paint. So if the video was helpful, if you liked the video, toss it a like. You know, you can comment if you want. Definitely hit a subscribe because that's what's helping us. But stay tuned for more videos. I'm gonna keep posting until I get bored of doing it. So I'm not gonna get bored of doing it. But yeah, stay riding, guys.